Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Mex-Tszyu is calling himself a Mex-Tszyu-Can because he's saying his fighting style is very similar to the Mexican style. But since he's Tim from Australia, he's a Mex-Tszyu-Can. Now, he's been going on and on about Keith Thurman and about how Keith Thurman has been inactive, about Keith Thurman at one point in time was a great fighter at 147. And he truly believes that Keith Thurman's inactivity, coupled with Tim Tszyu's Mex-Tszyu-Can style of fighting, is going to be more than enough for Tim Tszyu to get a vicious knockout over Keith Thurman. Matter of fact, Tim Tszyu didn't really like Keith Thurman's assertion that the so-called Mexican style, when it comes to boxing, is really, flat-footed, slow-footed, and just not going to be enough against a guy like Keith Thurman. So, although I have to admit, first let me say this, right? I admit that Keith Thurman has been out the ring for a while. And he has fought a lot of fighters who were Mexican. Well, he fought some. And Keith Thurman was able to get victories over him. But let's understand something now. Tim Tszyu is a different kind of animal. And if I was going off of what Keith Thurman is saying, then I definitely would be of the opinion that Keith Thurman, based off of his words, that Keith Thurman would get in there and defeat Tim Tszyu. And I understand how a lot of people feel styles make fights, and Tim Tszyu is going to run into something that he has never encountered in the ring as a fighter who can move laterally, who can counter you, who can time you, who has pinpoint accuracy, and has respectful power. But this is the thing. That inactivity is something else. And when you look at Tim Tszyu and him being active and the way he's been able to win, for me, it's hard for me to say that Keith Thurman is going to be able to get a victory over Tim Tszyu. And I've already explained why I feel that way. Okay? I feel that way because you look at Keith Thurman when he returned to the ring after that layoff. Let's just take a look at it right now, okay? So let's just take a look at it, right? So let me scroll up and take a look, right? So you look here when he returned to the ring. So after Danny Garcia in 2017, he returned to the ring. He faced Josecito Lopez. Keith Thurman didn't look like the Keith Thurman who fought Danny Garcia. The Keith Thurman who fought Danny Garcia would have tranquilized Josecito Lopez within one round. But you saw the fight ended up going the distance, and Keith Thurman won a unanimous decision. Then he goes and he fights Pacquiao. He got dropped. So to me, what we saw was Keith Thurman, I would say, a deterioration in his performance, even though he came back in the second half of the fight and he had great moments against Pacquiao. Then he goes and he fights Mario Barrios. And he did beat Mario Barrios. He did beat him, unanimous decision. But Keith Thurman took a little bit of damage in that fight. So my thing is, to go from 2019 having 2 fights, then coming to 2022 having 1 fight, and now to be here in 2024 getting ready to fight a guy, Tim Tszyu, who's had several fights over the last year. How do you all expect Keith Thurman to look better against Tim Tszyu than he did against Josecito Lopez when he was much younger, against Manny Pacquiao when he was much younger, and against Mario Barrios when he was 2 years younger than what he's going to be going in the ring with Tim Tszyu? How do you expect him to have better reflexes, better speed. Power, they say power is the last to leave. Better punch resistance, better endurance, better stamina. How do you expect that? And that's all I'm saying. But since the whole thing with Keith Thurman saying he's not worried about a Mexican, Tim has a Mexican style. Most Mexicans fight with flat feet, they're slow. He's not worried about them. So when you come and you take a look at the names on Keith Thurman's record, he hasn't lost to anyone, but he has fought a couple Mexicans. You see, in 2008, he fought Carlos Pena. You see who else he fought. He fought Edwin dos Santos Barrios. He fought Rojas. He fought Lopez, Medina. Well, Quintana's from Puerto Rico, but Quintana can fight. He fought Diaz. He fought Guerrero. California with Mexican style of fighting. Then Josecito Lopez and Soto Caras. I didn't see Soto Caras on here, but I know he fought. Here it is right here, Jesus Soto Caras. So what I'm getting at is Keith Thurman has every right to feel, based on his past performances against Mexican fighters, that they don't stand a chance against him because he's always figured out a way to get them out of there. At the same time, Tim Tszyu, the Mex-Tszyu-Can, he's not Soto Caras. He's not any of these other guys that Keith Thurman faced years ago. Tim Tszyu, as a young, hungry Australian, comes from he comes from the same lineage as his father Costa Tszyu. And we know those Russian fighters are very rugged, very durable. Tim inherited some of his, I'd say, we know he has his father's DNA because that's his child, but as a fighter, he inherited his father's fighting DNA. And I just think, when him and Keith Thurman get in the ring, I think we're going to get a very good fight, because what you got is Tim, the Mex-Tszyu-Can, who has to make a statement by knocking out Keith Thurman. Terrence Crawford, Earl Spence, there are a couple of fighters. I know politics gets in the way, but it would have been nice to see a couple of those guys fight Keith Thurman, defeat Keith Thurman, so they could have that feather in their cap. It didn't work out that way. Manny Pacquiao was able to get the fight, and Manny Pacquiao has the Keith Thurman feather in his cap because he was able to clip him. Now, some of these elite fighters at 147, I just think they missed an opportunity to get a fight going with Keith Thurman to possibly get a win and have that feather in their cap. But let me tell you something. Keith Thurman is a very high risk, but a very high reward type fight for anyone. But when you look at this fight taking place, 155, let's just say 154. Well, it's 155 pounds, but who knows what they're going to come in at. Probably 154, 154.5 or whatever. I just think this whole idea that Tim Tszyu is just a plotter and is just going to plod along, I just think that's an uncouth remark, and I think Tim Tszyu feels the same way. And I do agree with Keith Thurman that sometimes with the Mexican style, it can be a bit one-dimensional. It's coming straight forward and just, basically looking for the mash-up, crash-up, and is trying to outwork you, outwill you. But at the same time, Mexican styles are one of the greatest styles in the world. Highly effective, and that's why a lot of the Mexicans, I would say they dominate, especially in the lighter weight classes where a lot of them fight. They tend to dominate because that style, if you don't have an engine on you, if you don't have defense on you, if you can't understand distance, and you get in there, you just get put into that damn the Mexican blender. And I think when it comes to a Tim the Mex-Tszyu-Can, I think that's exactly what he's looking to do to Keith Thurman, is put him in the Tim Mex-Tszyu-Can blender and just chop him up, man. But I just think that's easier said than done. But I gotta go with Tim Tszyu, man. I just have a feeling Tim Tszyu is gonna get in there and handle business. But there are a lot of people who are starting to kind of migrate over, and from the Tim Tszyu ship over to the Keith Thurman ship, and they're saying that, hey, this is the ship that we want to sail with, and we feel Keith Thurman is going to knock out Tim Mex-Tszyu-Can. We just got to wait and see. But I tell you what, I'm excited about this fight happening. I really am. Because the same thing we can say with Keith, one-time Thurman, it just takes one punch for him to end the fight. Same thing we can say about Tim Mex-Tszyu-Can. It just takes one punch for him to end the fight too. So this is a fight where I think it's just whoever gets hit with the first hard shot. If they don't get knocked out or they don't get hurt, I think they're going to become tentative and apprehensive because they're going to say, wow, this guy's the real deal. And we know Tim Tszyu can be hurt. We know Keith Thurman can be hurt. He can be buzzed, but he can really be hurt to the body. And with Tim the Mex-Tszyu-Can, we all know the Mexican style. They go to the body. They throw body shots. But we're going to have to see if Tim Tszyu is willing to take that risk of getting hit and countered upstairs with something heavy from Keith Thurman just to access Keith Thurman's body. But that being said, Tim Tszyu can make Keith Thurman squeal. I don't know. But one thing's for sure. If anyone can, it'll be Tim the Mex-Tszyu-Can. And I'm looking forward to the fight, man. Y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. I'm in the breeze.